Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be motivated by your host, Reverend John Wheeler! Now shut up! You shut up! Sit down! Shut up! Shut up!
Hello there. Ouch. Burning myself with my fake cigarette. Par for the course, I suppose. Hello. I am the Reverend John Wheeler. Regular John Wheeler. Reverend, regular. It works either way. It doesn't matter. I don't really know who I am. I mean, I kind of do, and it's okay. I will admit, though, that this podcast is a vestige of a time, when I was trying to make this YouTube channel happen because it was my only way out of the doldrums of poverty. And yet again, it's not really where I was even recently, but it was like, can you imagine the privilege? Let's go there for a second. Of me going, there's all kinds of things I could do for money, but a lot of them are a lot of work and they're not as much fun. So my desperation didn't come from needing or wanting, but it came from, can I please have my needs and wants met by me doing the easiest thing possible? How can I increase my ROI? Am I any better than any businessman that owns multiple apartment buildings and doesn't, allow you to have your stupid cats and then, doesn't change the filters on the HVAC system or whatever, so it's not as warm in the winter. And he's losing money on that. He needs to change those filters. It's working the machines too hard. They're going to blow out faster than usual. It's wasting energy or whatever. But you don't know that, and maybe he doesn't even know that. He or she, whoever this terrible person is, are the evil people that, pull the strings because of their higher birth. Is it worth gendering them? I don't know. The bigger thing is that I don't care. If you haven't noticed, I'm doing this one solo. Meredith isn't feeling well, and frankly, neither am I. Or I wasn't yesterday when we normally would do it, I guess. That's the important thing. And this is what this is going to be about a little bit. I think the thrust of this one is going to be about the fact that, look, I never loved the internet. I'm old enough to remember when the internet was only a thing for nerds. It was a difficult thing. It was an expensive thing. It was a limited thing. And pre-social media, I was only adjacently connected to it because I just had nerdy friends that were part of BBS message boards and all of that stuff. Or people who had access to the internet because they were going to college. By the way, I never really, I went to 2 years of community college. Not even trade school, because I went long enough ago in the late 90s, when it was still don't go to trade school. You don't want to be, I once got angrily told when my people didn't feel that I was doing well enough in school, and you can decide which people that might be. What do you want to do? Be welding cars together? And it's hilarious that right now that would actually be the kind of thing everyone would go wow, all this student loan forgiveness is for all those highfalutin degrees. You should have gone to trade school. It's for what? For welding the cars together. It's like this treat now. It would have been this sad joke. As someone who grew up in a trailer park, it's just oh, you're going to settle for welding cars together? You have so much more potential than that. And it's oh, well, it sounds like I have more potential than you have money. But yeah, I don't quite know what I'm ranting about, but right, that the internet back in those days, those new days, those days where the really cool nerds that went to the expensive college I couldn't go to, even though apparently I was supposed to be because of something. But, they had BBS forums and all these message boards and stuff, just those weird early days of the internet. And I don't know if anybody, you wouldn't be able to have a video podcast just without doing any work the way that I do, or even at all. at a certain point. You know, I listened to a thing where there was like an interview with Tom Green where he was like kind of the granddaddy of podcasts, I guess, because he figured out you could broadcast through a website, and when people were first able to watch videos on their computers through this thing called like the TriCaster system, it was like this whole thing. I don't know anything about it because really, I've always been a guy with big ideas, and I've been a guy that's done a lot of things, but I was never at the cutting edge of any kind of technology because honestly, it was expensive and scary, and I just didn't come from that stock to where it'd be like, oh, John's kind of tech savvy. Well, yeah, I am now that everything's the easiest thing in the world. Now that, you know, the computer I use at work, now that I have a full-time job, is like a fucking fully loaded this year iMac or whatever that has like the whole Adobe Creative Suite on it, or, you know, it's like, yeah, you don't have to be a wizard to like make that, just works by itself. That's the point of the Mac stuff. I'm not like some kind of Linux guy that can like build my own whatever, and you know, I don't have that going on. Jesus Christ, I'm so sorry. I will get to the point of what I'm talking about, and I swear. The point that I want to get to is that I had nerdy enough friends with parents with enough money back in the day where they were sort of academic or whatever, and they were some of the only people with the internet. And there was this thing every September, I think, and it was like when a new crop of random weirdos that didn't know how the internet worked would get internet. You know, they would start going to expensive ass school that their parents were paying for, and they would get like, you know, the Prodigy online connection, like whatever the hell it was, and they'd be like flooding the forums with their dumbass opinions and be like, hey, you did it. And it'd be like all these new people that just, like, they weren't qualified to comment on anything really, except for the fact that, like, and this all sounds so weird in the eyes of history, but, you know, except for the fact that, like, you know, it's like, oh, yeah, their folks had the money and they get to go to school and they have a computer internet thing there. In the early days of the internet, and, you know, I'm talking about the way early days. And everyone from back then, when, like, social media started, called it the Eternal September. So it was like, you know, Twitter even at the very beginning used to only be nerds. Well, it was still like when it was in a post-MySpace world, it was like when all that stuff was happening. But Twitter went from like, you know, it was the first thing with hashtags in it. All that stuff was new at one point, you have to remember. And, you know, it'd be like, Twitter would be like, hashtag this Linux system, hashtag this thing about some weird, complicated, whatever computer thing. Because it was all nerds, you know, and which I would argue is the purest form of that kind of thing. It's like the, you know, but somebody, I think it was my friend Peter, actually pointed out that there was just this one day on Twitter when it was hashtag baby mamas be like, and it was like, wait, what? And it wasn't like, you know, I want to clarify something. It's not like me or him or a lot of any of our contemporaries or friends or whoever are the kind of like sad, lame people on the internet that are like, baby mama's, oh, you're going to say bae? Oh, it's like just like hating on slang or whatever. It's like for the sake of hating on slang because you're like a rural dumbass that thinks you have it all figured out. No, it wasn't that. It was just more interesting that like regular people with like, and look, I'm not trying to call anybody out here, but it's like people with like child support payments and like whatever. Those weren't the first people on the internet. They just weren't. Like people who'd be like, you know, baby mamas always be asking for money. Like, you know, it's like, and this isn't a specific group. It's not a racial thing. It is a socioeconomic thing. And you could call that a little elitist and shitty. And that would be fair, you know, to point out that. But that's just the thing. When the people that, let's just put it like this, when the people that shop at Walmart started going online, how about that? That's kind of when that was. And the reason I bring that up isn't because this isn't going to be some rant about like those people, because that's not even the issue. Not really. It's not about the highfalutin comic book nerd. Well, actually, guys ruling the internet, because that has its drawbacks too. But the thing is that things can exist with just the dorks on it, the cutting edge weirdness, the niche things. And it is what it is, and it can be full of fucking idiots. Like, even if the internet had, 103 people on it, fucking 50 of them would be, weird crypto atheists that just worship Elon Musk, even though he's, not a genius and just a guy born into tons of money that he's just Donald Trump. He's good at making people think that he is smart using the money he was born into, and he broke even on a whole bunch of things he invested his money in, so now he's an investment genius. And, it's funny, I could probably take the word inventor, and what it would be, so I'd take the N and write an S over it, investor, with a big bloody red S, and it would be him, investor. Yeah, the internet would be a fucking full-blown nightmare if it was only just 100 nerds. I mean, don't get me wrong. Just because people that shop at Walmart and have been to jail a bunch and have kids with 10 different people, just because they're on the internet, I'm not saying that that's the problem. What I'm saying is that once that happens, it's a benchmark, okay? It's nothing about those people. It's nothing about whatever. It is what it is. And again, I come from poverty. I'm doing a lot better now. And it is because I'm extremely intelligent. But let's not get into that. I'm just saying that, when everyone hops on, now there's big money to be made. Not a little money to be made. Not there's a handful of nerds on here and we can provide this service. Again, it's like a Linux server. There's some people and they'll pay their fair share and we'll be this little tech company and blah, 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 blah. No. The beginning of the end is when everyone jumps on board. When people who are willing to stand in line for 3 hours to go on a tilt-a-whirl ride because they're kids and just the people who you were I'd rather die than do what they're excited to do when they hop on something like the internet. That is when the beginning of the end is. And we all know the internet's over and it's just a telephone company that connects every idiot to every idiot and we all have to be there and it's all horrible. But here's what I wanted to point out. The profit motive has jumped the shark when it comes to search engine stuff. And I think that the thinking members of who is out here listening to this have also noticed this. Google used to be the most amazing thing that had ever happened. You could just type in it was like a fucking genie. You type in a question, it would give you an answer. And hell, in the early days, you'd be I want to see this. I want to watch all of Pulp Fiction for free. It would just be on YouTube. There was this Wild West thing. And those days ended. But even after those days ended, even after the total, copyright protection violation Wild West of the internet ended, and it has. Even when that ended, at the very least, you could get your fucking question answered. You could go, there's a thing happening with this program I'm using, like Photoshop, I don't know, whatever, something just easy like that. Or what's the value of this kind of car, and what if someone's saying this, is it too much or too little? And you would get an answer. It would go right to a thing where there's an answer. And the thing that's really frustrating, and I don't know where this goes, and I don't think it goes anywhere good, is that those days are over. When you ask, go ahead. If you're watching me, you're probably already the kind of person that's noticed this, whatever. You're not average member of society, some Valley Upspeak girl. It's just and I guess I just didn't realize that Google didn't bring you to the right answers all the time. Yeah, no, I know. So you probably already know this, but there's a slight chance that you're just someone I know on Facebook, maybe listens to this at work or something. But when you Google things, it doesn't give you the answer anymore. And I'm not even saying it doesn't give you the real answer. They're not telling you how many deaths there were from the COVID vaccine. Get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? I mean real normal things where you're let's say, I'll use my own life. why won't this image export out of Adobe Illustrator? You know, and it's a simple, straightforward question. The kind of question that there are answers to out there on the internet somewhere, like millions of them, good ones probably. And you ask that, and it's like, download Adobe Illustrator for free? Adobe Illustrator, it's like, it won't even come close to what you were asking. But the problem is like the first 2 pages of Google are all things that people have paid to make sure their thing comes up. And there's people with $70,000 a year jobs who are like SEO experts who lied their way into some company run by people older than me that don't know what SEO fucking is. And they're like, oh, well, they're the guys that... And it's where the profit motive starts breaking down even the one good thing there was about the internet, which was you could learn, you know, it's like I fell ass backwards into an actual 9-to-5 job that pays real big kid money, which is a real awesome place where I like everyone I work with. My job interview was with the owner of the whole place, and he's a nice guy, and he's a good businessman, and I learn things from him, and it's fun to be there, and they pay me, and I learn new skills along the way, and everyone trusts me to do things. Like, it's fucking awesome. It's nothing I went to college for. It's the kind of thing you definitely were supposed to go to college for, but I've learned everything by watching, like, YouTube videos and whatever. And I feel like that's starting to fall apart a little bit, though, because rather than, you know, you Google something, right? Or you DuckDuckGo it, or you fucking whatever it. None of those things are safe. All those things are just things that were designed to make money, which everything is, and whatever, that is the way it is. But I'm not saying, oh, this one's good and this one's bad. I'm saying if it exists at all, it's trying to do is make money. And the fact that you can make money off of this kind of thing is why this is the way it is. So we're kind of stuck. So don't split hairs and tell me there's like some Joe Rogan search engine that's, well, this one, you know, isn't controlled by George Soros. Just fuck you. Shut up. Like, I'm dealing with reality here and not your fucking weird football game of the who's who of who is trying to control us now. That the people who really control you are lying and blaming and whatever, and maybe don't even really exist. I don't know. But the point is that now, you know, you can pay to be like, well, if someone mentions Adobe After Effects, or if someone mentions this at all, it needs to go to our thing because we have all the right search terms and we paid for the advertising and whatever. And there's like this phony thing where it's like, oh, these are the sponsored like links, but it's like 10 pages in of that. Like it's so like the thing, you know, I'm not a tech guy, but if you come up with this, like something that just recognizes search engine optimized content or whatever, and it just skips all the way past with like the first Google response you get is like 12 pages in where all that kind of stops. And it's just like, oh, you're trying to do this with After Effects? Oh, well, here's what you do, you know. And everything is like that, too, because there's a lot of things that I've had to, like, look up to be like, how do you do this? And the answer I'm looking for is 2 or 3 sentences, maybe, you know. Like, oh, go under this and look up this or whatever. But I'll get a lot of shit information because it's the question that it... Like, I ask a question... and it brings me to something, and I'm like, this is irrelevant to what I'm asking, and then you realize, oh, it's just sort of like, not auto-corrected, but it's just like, oh, so you're asking, where do I buy the very best Adobe After Effects plugins? Or, you know what I mean? Like, and then the answer to that is, of course, right here. Here's where you buy those. I'm like, that's not what I asked, and it's not even close to what I asked, and this is the goddamn internet. 1 million billion people just today asked the same question I just asked. And 10,000 people have answered it, and it's there. But they didn't pay to have their content put up to the top, so you just get this phony, crappy slog of like, you ask things, you're like, hey, this thing is wrong with my Toyota Camry, and it's like, Toyota Camry's for sale, and it's like, there's nothing in my thing that said I want to buy a Toyota Camry. I was like, the drive shaft of the rear differential system is broken, and where in the Twin Cities area can I get a part for that? And it's like, new Toyota Camry? Like, no. And it didn't used to be that way. And here's Now I'm talking about Adobe programs and cars, and I've run into that, like that's a real thing. But I'm set off on this thing that I'm bitching about. Not because of Adobe programs and cars, but because health, wellness, and nutrition things work the exact same way. And again, I know you're going to be like, we already know there's, depending on which kind of dumbass you are, and there's a few, it's like, oh, there's a lot of things telling you that the vaccine's good for you, and it's really not. And like, yeah, okay. So you got to use DuckDuckGo, and okay. You got to use JoeRogan.com to search the real answers. Or other people being like, yeah, it's the other way around. Whatever. Like, whichever thing it is, I'm not looking for a politicized angle on something. I'm just looking for, like, the boring computer nerd basics of, like, whatever it is. And a particularly frustrating thing has happened because my lovely wife, Alexis, who, just for clarification, the person who's most of the time on this show with me is my lovely friend, Meredith, who's not my wife. My wife was on the Halloween special, and she's been on like one episode. You've seen her, maybe. If you go back, you've seen her. And if you're listening, you've heard her. Whatever. But we kind of slowly pieced together that her gallbladder probably needs removing. And she has a family history of that and whatever. But stuff with food on the internet is just out of control. Like, it is pure insanity. I'm not even about to say that whatever, this is a bad thing for some people, but it got recommended before we really completely knew that it was a gallbladder thing. We thought it might have been like a gut biome thing, which mimics a lot of the same stuff, and that, I'm not blaming anybody for that because that's like, medical stuff. There's a lot of people out there that think the world of doctors and nurses and whatever. They're like, oh, they have all the right answers. But when you come in there and you're a white lady, they're like, sorry, Karen, the real answers are in the back, and we only give those to the minorities. And we're going to lie to you because of our agenda. Or what, that's not true. The truth is that the truth is that 100 years from now, we're going to make fun of medical shit from right now the way we right now make fun of medical shit from the 1920s. It's just as it progresses, you realize how much we don't really know and how bad we are at everything. And so we've gotten better, but your doctor's not keeping the right answers from you. They're just shooting in the dark, like everything, because the human body is a complicated, terrifying nightmare that no one fully understands, and there's no such thing as the average person, and everybody's medical stuff and gut biome and allergies and telomeres and the terpenes from cannabis affect everybody differently depending on your genetics and your metabolism. It's all different. You just don't goddamn the fuck know. But there are certain things that mimic certain things, or they get lost or whatever. And my point being is that we kind of thought my wife's thing was a gut biome thing and not a fuck you gallbladder thing. Luckily, again, not luckily, but her mom had an issue with that back in her 20s. And her dad's a nurse, and they kind of were like, wait a second, it sounds like you have this. But that's the thing, it took some actual real people with real world experience to figure that out. The internet was just completely wrong. The internet was like, oh, it might be a gut biome thing, and so it recommended a bone broth cleanse. And here's the thing where I'm not all that mad at the internet. Something like bone broth, in theory, should be great for you. The whole caveman diet thing, there's a lot of reasonable goodness to that kind of thing. It's like carnivore diets. Like that 1970s thing where it's like, fat makes you fat, that's why it's called fat. And it turns out like a high clean fat diet is actually like super healthy for you. And they're like, don't eat fat, eat this processed plastic sugar carb food instead. And then you won't get fat, and everyone gets fat. And it's like, well, you should try these weight loss pills. Or these, like, sweat into the oldies exercise tapes, or, like, whatever. Like, it was all a joke. That's the thing. It was all a joke. There was a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of things steered around by the profit motive. Like, the sugar companies paid to tell you that things need to be lower in fat. So that people would stop. When people were trying to lose weight, they wouldn't stop eating processed horseshit and sugar. They'd be like, oh, it's fat. That's what does it. And I make fun of those times. But the internet now is like those times. Because here's the thing. I tried, in solidarity, and because I'm a guy that tries healthy things occasionally, like not drinking every single day or exercising sometimes, or intermittent fasting. I take a lot of vitamins and omega-3s. Whatever. I try. I'm not the worst looking 42-year-old guy in the world because I try. And if I didn't drink, I'd probably look like I'm 20. But, you know, we all have our things. But I was like, yeah, I'll do it too. And two things happen. One, bone broth has lots of fat in it. And fat's normally good for you. But if your gallbladder is needing to be taken out, the fat is actually going to make you really sick. It's going to fuck it up worse. So it made her feel worse. Now, I don't have a bum gallbladder. But I got incredibly sick with the bone broth thing. And it was really, really hard, thanks to the modern internet, to figure out what was happening. And what was happening, as I finally figured out, and again, it's not like, you know, the internet's not totally dead yet. I still was able to use the internet and various search engines to find an answer to my problem. You know, so I'm not saying it's like, oh, let's turn Amish. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not an idiot. It's still one of the better things we have. But getting to the fucking point was very, very, very difficult. As in, I was like, I was like having panic attacks, and it's like, this is the thing, and I've talked about my anxiety and panic on this podcast before, on this YouTube channel before, and yeah, it's like a very real thing. But I'd kind of managed it. Like, I'd figured out everything I needed to do to avoid that kind of thing. I was going to therapy. I tried, you know, things like SSRIs that just made me fat and full of skin problems, and half my beard fell out and everything. And I worked my way through it, and everything's great. So it's like, I hadn't felt like that in like 2 years. Suddenly, I was feeling all weird and brain foggy. And that's where things got really fucking annoying. Is that it turns out, eventually, after a lot of digging and looking, that bone broth contains some kind of glutamines or something in it that can throw off your neurochemistry and give you like stress and panic attacks and brain fog and like real problematic shit. It's like 50 Google pages down. Like, I don't know how many O's in Google. Get all the way down there. And the things you find before that are just like, well, when you quit carbs, I'm like, I wasn't eating carbs though. This wasn't a carb cleanse. Yeah, I know you get that like carb flu or whatever. You know, it's just like, well, you had a drink yesterday that has sugar in it and now you're not. And I'm like, okay, but like it was going to be more than 8 hours. You know what I mean? Like, I already wasn't going to be drinking in the middle of the day when this was happening. Like, I'm not in withdrawals. Okay? Like, if it was getting enough sugar from booze, it would be like 2 days down the line or whatever, not the middle of the next day. And everything was just like, well, you know, it's just this. It's like, I'm not having carb withdrawal. Like, literally, like, I was drinking this when I would have still been, like, I intermittent fast. So, like, I wouldn't even have been eating food again yet by now. You know what I mean? Like, until now. There's something in it. There's something in it. And all you can find, because it's trendy, and companies sell it, and influencers that have health things, they make their money by pushing. It's just like, there's just, where there's money, there's just a cloud of crap. They're like, bone broth made me feel sick. It's like, well, you know, when you stop eating 100 pounds of sugar a day, it's like, I eat 0. So why am I sick? Oh, there's no answer for that. There's no nuance, because you got to nail it in your fucking search thing. You know what I mean? You got to get it right. You got to be like, bone broth, something, something, my brain. And it's like, anyway, I finally figured out that it contains something that a small percentage of, which is always me, it's like, well, for some people, it will actually ruin your life and fuck everything up. But it's so few people that we're just going to pretend it doesn't even happen. Because if it was real enough, we'd go out of business. So we're just going to sweep that under the rug. And it's like, oh, that's me. It's John Wheeler. I always have a problem with everything. Like, well, why are you so negative? You know, why, you know, it's like dog people. It's just like, yeah, when they lick me, I itch. It's like, well, I don't understand why you hate dogs so much. I'm like, no. Or you're like, oh, weed doesn't really cure anything for me. It makes me more anxious. You didn't find the right strain. You're not smoking it right. You're not doing it right. It's the favorite thing part of people's brain where it's just like, well, no, this is the solution. So it's probably just like something wrong with you. It's like, yeah, there is something wrong with me. I'm trying to fucking Google it. Where the hell is the answer? Well, maybe nobody's answered it. There's 4 million people have answered this question, and like 10,000 of them have probably answered it really good. Where is that? Well, they didn't like opt in for our service. Oh, they didn't pay to have their answers float to the top. Okay, cool. Well, it's not. Well, yeah, no, but you just get the fuck you. And so it was very difficult with a head full of brain fog and panic attack to figure out, oh yeah, this does this sometimes. And I'm not saying the internet's in the pocket of big bone broth, but I'm just saying that, like, you can't get a straight answer. Search engines have now become a panicky corporate weirdo that's paid by a bunch of people to give you the answer they want you to get, you know? So imagine that guy, if that was a dude in a suit from like an 80s movie or something, who's like, all right, Rick, you have all the answers to all the questions here, but if you could go right ahead, and someone asks about this, make sure to tell them about this, tell them about our deals, our specials, our sales on that, and he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So I'm like, hey, Rick, right? So, I've been noticing that broccoli makes me gassy. It's like, the broccoli diet is very good for you. It's like, yeah, except for it, like, gives me stomach cramps and makes me gassy. Is it the broccoli, or is it what I'm cooking it in? It's like, you can cook broccoli and things. These certain oils, they're good, and you can buy $4.99 off our website. It's like, like, okay, why is this making me fart, Rick? Why? Tell me. It doesn't do that. It's like, it does to me, but I'm just trying to figure out why. Like, well, we also sell Tums. I'm like, yeah, no. Why does this broccoli make me fart, Rick? Well, broccoli can help with gas if you have it. No. And you know what I mean? That is what the internet is now. And it's because there's either a company that sells broccoli, a company that sells a cure to the broccoli farts, but you'll never get your answer as to why the broccoli makes you fart. And that is a stupid thing about capitalism. It just, well, there's a lot of stupid things about it. And also, I'm the kind of guy that does business and makes money, but you know, what are you going to do? Die? Like, that's the thing. I'm 42 years old. I barely have any friends. All the friends I do have are adults that have jobs. You know what I mean? Like, are we going to form a rebellion? The best I can do is bitch about it on the internet, and then have no one see it, because I'm not spending a bunch of money to be like, someone's like, is capitalism good for the dissemination of information online? And it's like, what, is this video going to come to the top? No, because I didn't pay $10,000 to have A, promotional things put in, and B, some expert in the up-to-the-minute SEO make sure that you're going to see it no matter what happens. Yeah, no, none of it doesn't matter. All I can do is complain. Revolution, by the way, and some of the people that watch this, I love you. It's not going to happen. You just got to figure out how to game the system and make yourself comfortable. We're not trying to avoid dystopia. We've been there. I think it's funny. All these 80s movies came out talking about the future, and the thing is the 80s, that was it. In the mid-century, there was some potential, and it kind of got a little weird in the 70s, and the 80s was the dystopian, and now we've just been on borrowed time for decades. And I really do believe that. Do what you can. Join your local neighborhood association. Vote for your city council people. Do everything you can. But look, I love the idea, and I have friends that are like, I'm going to live off the grid, and I'm going to do, and good for you. That's so great. And I want you to figure out how to do that. But the problem is post-COVID, and some people are like, it's still going on. Yeah, everything's still going on. AIDS is still a thing. Everything's a problem. What the fuck are you going to do? But post the big part of whatever. I'm not going to sit under a Disney blanket next to a cat box and wear a mask when I go out once a year. It's like, good for you. Like, if you hate eye contact and people, COVID was almost exciting for you. And isn't that wonderful? But the rest of us go insane. And regular people who the world is full of, beware of them. When they couldn't go watch football anymore, they went insane. And you need to live in a world that's not insane. I'm sorry, you just do. But the point I'm about to make goes literally out to everybody. It goes out to the weird libertarian, off-the-grid people that think somehow gold is going to be worth something when everything falls apart. Spoiler alert, no it isn't. Bitcoin definitely won't. Gold won't either, though, because, a shiny rock? The grid falls, and it's the only thing that's worth anything is going to be food, bullets, and slaves. That's it. Diamonds, fucking gold, shiny rock, no. Something on a blockchain, no. There's not going to be electricity. There's not going to be anything. And then the other side, a lot of people I'm friends with, we're going to have a revolution. But, people clapping their hands gives you a panic attack. It's like, yeah. Good luck. And the thing I wanted to say about that is I was talking to someone a little while ago, about living off the grid and the whole dream, grow my own food. And good, yes. It's a good idea, being self-sustaining if you can. Do that. Absolutely. But the thing you got to be aware of is that, remember early COVID when people were there was runs on toilet paper, and then a little later gasoline, all this weird stuff happened. The supply chain stuff. That was the grid flinching. All right? The whole early pandemic 2020 thing. That was the grid doing this. Watch. That was what that was. That was the grid flinching. And it got pretty close to being real ugly. But it wasn't anywhere close to going down. The thing that I do want to point out is that if the grid were to stumble, a lot of us are done. Not even fall, stumble. Not flinch, not that little pandemic flinch. Stumble. If the grid were to kind of trip and stumble a little bit, things would get bad fast. to the point where if you're one of those people who's like, well, I'm going to be disconnected from everything, it's like, no. Like, if you're literally someone who's talking to me, you're too close to the fire. You've flown too close to the sun. Like, you'd have to be the kind of person that can survive the way an Inuit person in the Arctic Circle could survive. And if you can do that, when the grid stumbles, you will be alive and you'll be fine. Probably. You know, like you're hidden, you're too far away. Like if you're someone you just like live like an hour away from the cities and you have like neighbors and stuff and people are connected to electricity and you kind of have a farm with food on it or whatever. It's like, yeah, you might kind of be okay, but here's the thing. The grid stumbles and people are like, there really truly is nothing. We have nothing. We have nothing. They have cars you can put gas in. They're going to go out to your farm, and are you going to fend them off? Oh, an AR-15. It's like, there's 1,000 people. They're going to overrun you. Because that's the thing. Things don't get swept under the rug just because they go wrong. And that's another really annoying thing that I'm frustrated with. Both sides of a lot of things. You know, it's like, these people it's our turn. They need to sit down and shut up. They're not going to sit down and shut up. And be like, oh, white men need to get out of the way. It's like, cool, they're just going to shoot the schools up now. It's like, well, we need to get rid of guns. It's like, yeah, talk to the fucking gun lobby about that. It's great, but things just don't go away. Or we need to fucking these people. It's like, they're just going to still exist. Everyone, no matter what. Like, you have a problem with some group. It's like, okay, well, unless you completely exterminate them, like Final Solution style, they're not just going to go, okay, we'll be quiet now. No one does that. No one is going to kindly and politely go away. So when you're like, well, I'm going to live out here and I'm just going to farm and me and my family, my wife and 2 kids, we each have AR-15s, we're going to keep, and it's like people are starving to death, but they still have access to vehicles and they can still figure out where the roads go. They might just drive out into the middle of nowhere until they find you. Oh, yeah, and one group at a time shows up. Yeah, gun them down. Go ahead. But if a giant convoy of people, and they might have guns too, it's like, you see what I mean? Like, the grid stumbles, and even if you think you're so far, you're not, well, I'm not one of those idiots in a city. It's like, oh, the city will find you. Maybe, maybe not. You might get lucky. But you might get lucky. Is you might get lucky a good plan? Is it a permanent thing where you can act like you're so much smarter than everyone else that you're like, well, fingers crossed. Yeah? When the grid stumbles, I'm dead. That's fine. I'm gambling on it not doing that. Because I'm the kind of guy that works sort of all right with the grid, right? If YouTube exists, if a thing that needs a video producer to sell bongs exists, they'll pay me lots and lots of money and I can buy a Tesla and live in a house. Yes. I thrive in that situation. I don't thrive as a guy with a sharp stick trying to spear a rabbit for dinner. It's like, my back hurts. I'm old. I'm past the age where people who live outside normally live to. You die in your late 30s. You know, when you're like, oh, we're going to build a shelter out of rocks. Yeah, I'm already older than that. I'm already dead. So it's like, I'm not going to gamble on like, well, here's my plan for when things go down. It's like, my plan is that hopefully they don't. But the irony there is that there's a lot of people who are like, aha, but I'm so smart because I live out in the middle of nowhere. Now they're going to come for you. They're going to come for you. And that's still only if the grid stumbles. The grid stumbles. Again, you might want to figure out a way to like live like an Inuit in the Arctic Circle because no one's going to find you there. No one's going to come for what you have there. No one's going to be so hungry that they're going to show up en masse and eat you there. You're so far away from everything. It's so inclement. But the idea that you're going to like live anywhere near anything where you're going to be able to get gas for your truck if you're like, we're going to go a little closer to civilization, no. That's all done. You don't want to go anywhere near anything if the grid were to actually stumble. And let me say that a stumble isn't a fall. That is where people are like, well, if the grid falls, I'll be... No. The grid falls. I don't care how well prepared you are. I don't care how much of a survivalist person you are. If the grid falls because of the way everything works up to this point, you're fucked. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. If the grid falls, you might be living in an encampment in the Arctic Circle, and you might be fine for a while. But if the grid falls, we're talking about people finding nuclear weapon stockpiles that have now been left unguarded because everything is completely falling apart. We're talking about the Earth gets blown out of its orbit and sails away from the sun. If the grid falls, like, you would almost hope, if you're one of those people way out in the middle of nowhere that's totally self-sustaining, that it goes quick. Because if there's just garrisons of people running around in a completely lawless, gridless world, no one's ever going to be able to find nuclear stockpiles or like turn back on a nuclear power plant. You know, maybe it had a safety shut off when everything got fucked up. Hopefully. There's so much stuff that's like, oh, everything just completely fell apart. Like wild groups of people just started attacking other groups, you know. And they're just like 100 Chernobyls happened all over the fucking world with no one to try to dump fucking lead on it with helicopters because we're done working together. Everything's just fucked. There's no communication. It's every man, woman, and child for themselves. Just cannibalistic tribes of lunatics running everywhere. Every nuclear reactor on Earth goes critical. Everything's poisoned. The air, the water. I'm far away from that. It'll get to you. And if Fukushima radiation was getting to the California coast, that wasn't even that, comparatively speaking, bad of a situation compared to how it could go. And God bless it. This is why I usually have a co-host. I don't remember exactly why I brought that up. Why was I talking about the grid going down? Why was I talking about how no one was safe? Maybe because I'm kind of an establishment guy. Was that my point? I guess so. I guess it's that I'm no giant friend of like capitalism, but I am a anti-disestablishmentarianist in that way where I'm like, yeah, great, but I know that we kind of need things to work. And I also understand that we didn't always. I know that if we had stayed in a little bit of an early agrarian or maybe hunter-gathering, whatever type of civilization, yeah, shit could go wrong and it wouldn't really matter. But the thing is we're through the looking glass here, people. We've gotten to a certain point. We're at a certain point where working together and doing what's right for everybody is really the only way forward. It's like, let's tear it all down. It's like tearing it all down will get you eaten. It will cause bad actors to get a hold of nuclear weapons. It'll cause the worst people you can possibly imagine to end up in control of you at gunpoint. Or, you'll point a gun back at them, but then that's your life. You're fighting for your life. You're firing guns at people over limited resources in a hellscape. And that's your, well, but the last system was a little sexist. It's like, yeah, okay, I get that, but baby steps, okay? Because it's already there. There's already more guns than people on this planet. There's radioactive material. There's tanks. There's intercontinental ballistic missiles. There's just the kind of things where it's like, it's all there already. It's too late. The genie doesn't go back into the bottle. It's not a thing where you can be like, let's just tear it all down and start over. That's going to be so fucking messy that there might be no starting over. Okay, Einstein was the one that talked about if there's a World War III, World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. And that doesn't just mean, world superpowers getting into another tiff and launching nukes at each other. And, World War III could very well be the like, that's it, we've had it up to here, and we're just all going to fucking make sure that nothing ever works again. Because we're going to start from the ground up as, like, farmers or whatever. Which sounds terrible. Not going to lie. Maybe I benefit too much from all the terrible things in this world. I'm sure I do. I have to, because I'm comfortable. And at this point, My wife does things for work that really help people. I have to do some gymnastics. Now, I don't work for Monsanto or Dow or something like that. I work for a local Minnesota company that mostly just deals in things like cannabis and tobacco and what have you, and everything around that. So it's at least kind of a fun thing. Of course, those things can also hurt people, and we import things from China, and there's a whole thing with, you could find negativity in that. Is it the worst thing in the world? No. But nevertheless, I'm not growing food. I'm not, whatever. It's like, I'm doing something. I'm basically kind of an ad man, I guess, for this place that supplies people with something that I think that they should have and, they need at a reasonable price. But it's still capitalism. It still just very much is. It's not a like all I do is build barns and farm food and I have a little community. And again, it sounds terrifying. Like I'm meant to, at this point, I'm too old for that. I'm meant to work on a computer. And again, I don't work at a Fortune 500 company that just sells terror to people or nothing, But this whole episode, this rant, this drunken mess that comes late in the day after going to a big family thing, really has to do with the fact that the profit motive in the giant free information exchange that I have used to make my life better and to get where I need to be, that thing is falling apart a little bit. And it's a little upsetting because it was a tool I thought I'd always have access to. It was one of those things where, I had a calculator watch in third grade. And when I was in third grade, it was the 80s. The late 80s. But it wasn't even the 90s. I'm old. And I was cheating in a math test with it. And I got yelled at by a teacher who was like, "You're not always going to have that. You need to actually memorize the multiplication tables." And it wasn't even recently. It was a long time ago, and I was able to dance on her grave, being like, we have your cell phone, the little thing it has in it is a calculator. It's the most basic thing. It doesn't even need to be connected to the internet. It just needs electricity. And then someone once later said, well, what if the whole grid goes down and you need a calculator? I'm like, look, if there is no electricity, there's no anything anymore. I'm not going to need to figure out a tip at a sushi place. I don't know what the fuck I even need math for. The only math I ever do has to do with money. Some of it maybe for work or whatever is figuring out the dimensions of the logo has to go on a sticker, and it's the sticker's this tall by this, but I'm like, well, and if we scale it to fit this, you divide that in half. It's okay. It's but is anybody doing that kind of work when there's no more electricity? It's I don't think I'm going to have to use math when I'm just fighting wolves with a stick or whatever guns are left over. It's well, how many 7.62 by 3.9 rounds do I have for my AK-47 before I run out and I have to maybe switch to the shotgun? Okay. My calculator watch for that? No, it's for figuring out which, okay, this aluminum foil is cheaper, but I think there's, less feet of it than on this one. It's well, let's use the calculator. I'm not doing that kind of math when I'm not buying aluminum foil or figuring out a tip. That's all over at that point. But the weird thing is that it's like being on a balance beam. You fall off on one side, and it's well, the grid's down, and it's there's no more electricity anymore, so now you don't have your precious calculator, watch, your cell phone, but it's yeah, but at this point, I'm not doing math. But if you fall off the other side, you get to the weird profit motive side where it's, okay, the calculator doesn't work unless it's connected to the internet and you need to pay a monthly fee for a subscription because it gets updates or something. And you can go, what's 2 plus 2? And it's like, 2 plus 2 is actually an interesting question because, you know, it dates back to like, I'm like, yeah, okay. And it's like, we can sell you 2 pairs of underwear for $2. But I'm like, I'm 2 plus 2. What is that? You know, and that's the thing. You fall into that profit motive half, which I would say is the opposite side of the grid falling half because, you know, I think it is a gradient. I think it is like, here you have like, we go back to the Stone Age. And here it's just like a paid transaction to ask what 2 plus 2 means to the internet because you can't buy a calculator anymore because there's more money in selling you a subscription to a service that answers all your math questions, but it also tries to sell you math-related products. And it's like, that's what's like over here. And what you really want is to be in the middle section of that where you're like, there is a grid. Okay, there is government health insurance. There's electricity. There's nuclear power plants that aren't about to explode. It's warm in the winter because I have a heater. And I drive a reasonable car to a job that I do to make money so that I can live. And it's an okay job. And I like the people there. And it's fun. And whatever. I don't want the grid going down. But I also don't want, like, the whole, like, yes, but then some people's job is to make the most money out of things on the internet as they possibly can to the point where the internet starts not being useful anymore. Like, that gets weird and fucked up and gross. And I understand. It's like, money doesn't, yeah, it doesn't make you happy, but lack of it just makes you fucking miserable. You know, like... And I was talking to someone that was just like, I just wish that all I could do is get myself set up so I could be like left alone. I don't want to be a millionaire. I just want to, you know, I just want to be good. And it's like, yeah, but do you realize how expensive that is? And like, I just want to not have to fucking deal with anything and just be left alone and be all set and be comfortable. It's like, that costs like $5 million. If you never want to actually like work at a shitty place ever again. It's like if you want to just like stop everything right now and just be totally okay and comfortable. Unless you want to be a farmer in the Arctic Circle or wherever, it's like you have to go somewhere where people don't already own land. Or you can, but maybe all the money you need is like, okay, you buy a bunch of acres of land, you figure out, hopefully it's fertile because, by the way, you can't just grow potatoes in anything. It's like, it can't be acidic, it can't be, you know, you gotta learn. It's backbreaking labor to fucking live off the land. It really is. And I think a lot of people forget that too. It's like, dude, and I'm not saying that that's what that was completely about, but it's more like you, to be completely outside of everything, you still either have to have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money, or be prepared to use a very small amount of space to like hunt and gather and farm and whatever. And it is absolutely, is it better than customer service? The answer to that, of course, is yes, because everything is. But it is backbreaking, and you got to remember that when you start getting into your 40s, like, you're past the age where people were like alive anymore doing that. Like, you really get to where it's like the system that we're all a part of is the reason that you can live to be like 90 years old. Like, the, you know, if you're lucky. I'm not saying everyone lives to 90, but, you know, there was a lot of, particularly up this way, I think a lot of northern native peoples didn't count years, they counted winters. Because that really told you, you know, what the reality of the situation was. You know, if you go like, yeah, I'm like 50 years old, it's like, yeah, all right. But when people lived outside, minus like shelters, and they were like hunting and, you know, whatever to like live. And you live somewhere with harsh, crazy winters, and you said, I'm 50 winters. That meant something. That was like, dude, this guy has survived 50 of these fucking things that kill half of us every single time they happen every year. It's like, okay, well, that carries some weight. And that's super interesting. And not the topic for this or whatever, but it's just my thing about, like, it's not that easy. Like going, I just would like to only have to do that. It's actually a giant ask. It's not a simple thing. You know. And I promise this whole episode isn't just a justification as to why I'm sort of like a cage-rattling anti-establishment guy. Or I used to be anyway. And it's not that I've really bought in, but it's more like it's easy to be that person in your early 20s, because if you were in Mad Max world or even just like a Dust Bowl farmer, like, yeah, well, you might survive then, but you get to a certain age and you realize you're alive at the behest of being domesticated, like some of the snakes that we own, they live to be, like, when you look it up, it's like, yeah, they live to be like 5 in the wild, but like 30 in captivity. It's like, that's us too. You know, it's like we live to be like maybe into our 30s in the wild, maybe, and you can live nearly 3 times that in captivity, and comfortably, not miserably, not hooked to tubes. You can be like, yeah, I'm fine, because you just have access to everything you need. You know, you can be an 80-year-old guy that still goes jogging every day because you're not fighting wolves in like northern Alaska with no other people there to help you. Like, it's not a thing. And anyway, like, that is the full circle this comes, where, you know, my health was threatened by this thing that was not very well explained on the internet, and it's like, without all this stuff, I'd probably already be dead by now. But going too far over to the profit motive, sort of, like, yeah, you know, there's more money in not giving people the answer they want side of things, that almost killed me too, though. There really is a balance. There really is no such thing as, like, it would just be better if we lived over here. It's like, no, I'd be dead by now. Or people who are like, the free market will decide everything. It's like, that'll kill you too. There really is nuance. There really has to be regulations. Sorry, libertarians and anarchists, and sorry to point out that you're basically the same people. Oops, yes. Yeah. I'm a little disappointed in the internet. I know a lot of you have been saying that since 2016 or whatever, and I understand. And I was disappointed in the internet at that point too, I will say. But it's like in a non-politicized, just regular functionality type of way. I'm disappointed in the internet in a way where I'm not disappointed in people on the internet. Because I think that's what we were. You know, 2015, 2016, when Grandma got on Facebook and democracy started to fall apart. Because we were disappointed in Grandma. You know, we were disappointed in people whose brains were just ruined by lead gasoline fumes, and they're just hateful and ignorant and whatever, and now they're old. We were disappointed in that. We're being disappointed in the entire system of, like, well, this tool I used to have access to now no longer works. You know, it's like waking up one day and the screwdriver you like is a hammer now, and you're like, hammers are better. It's like, not, but I need to screw this thing. It's not better. It's like, yeah, but it's a good hammer. It's like, that doesn't matter. It's not what I wanted. It's not what it was. It's not useful for me right now. I needed this, and this is how it always was before. And it's like, buy hammers online? Yeah. So anyway, go on the internet and watch the other episodes of this podcast and watch the other stupid things on my YouTube channel. Because, God bless it, the internet sucks. But it's all we got.
The Reverend John Wheeler podcast takes zero responsibility for the words, actions, or ideas of its host, guests, or listeners. Though the people on the screen may at times be speaking directly to you and may occasionally give you direct calls to action, neither Reverend John nor the Alchemical Cocktail Lounge are under any moral or legal obligation to answer for the potentially disastrous repercussions that may arise if you are stupid enough to actually follow the orders of a raving lunatic. Think for yourself and do whatever you want, because you're on your own. If anyone ever tries to sue this podcast, black SUVs will converge on your location in the darkness of night and you will never be seen again. Remember to like and subscribe.